Kind of stinks that when I refresh the page, I have to log in again. I can't stay signed in. So let's at least do a little something to make that happen. Maybe it's not a permanent solution, but what if at least I saved the user in local storage and just loaded it out of there every time? How's that sound? We can do that. That doesn't sound hard. So in app.js, right? That's where handle auth is. This is when we sign in. So when we sign in, we'll not only set it in state, how about we set it in local storage? So local storage.set item, an item called user. And then we can't just stick user in there, right? We have to stringify it. So JSON.stringify user. What is JSON? It is like JavaScript object notation. That's what it stands for. If you look at package.json, that's an example. So it looks like a JavaScript object, but there are some rules. The property names must be quoted. In fact, they must be double quoted. And the values also, you have to use double quotes all the time. You can't have trailing commas. There are a few other rules that make it different from pure JavaScript objects. But it's a data format that's used a lot in APIs. It kind of is used in a lot of places where XML used to be used. It's a lot less of a pain in the neck than XML. A lot more readable. So yeah, it's just a data format for that. So in this case, it's a thing that it's really easy to turn an object or an array into, because local storage only stores strings. Can't store objects in it. So let's see about that. Let's log in as Stuart at people.gov. And let's check out in our console, local storage.get item user. And there it is. So it did store it. I refresh the page. It's still there, but it's not in our component state, right? So we have to make sure that it is loaded into the state as soon as it loads. Can't be done. It's too hard. No, it isn't. We can do it. So I said, what day of the week is this? I said yesterday, which then is Tuesday, that you could use stateless functional components under certain circumstances, right? So we know that to use a stateless functional component, obviously you can't have state. If you need state, you're going to have to use a class. You can't use a functional component. There's another circumstance in which you can't use stateless functional components, and that is if you need to use lifecycle methods. So if you inherit from component, if you make your thing a class, there are certain methods that if you override them, they will run automatically at certain times in that component's life. So looking at the React documentation, here's the documentation for React component. This page contains a detailed API reference for the React component class, blah, blah, blah. Here, something about state and lifecycle. So the concept of state and lifecycle in a React component. Consider some example. Blah, 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 blah. I don't want to consider that example. Let's look under API reference for React component. Is that the same ding page? Well, somehow I found the page I was actually looking for last time. How did I find it? Yeah, I don't like, this example is fine, but it's not the thing I want. React, lifecycle. Is this it? No. It's the other one. It's a. I think it was that page we just scrolled down. Even further? Not this one, the other one. I keep getting to the same gosh darn page, and it's ticking me off. Oh no, this is. They changed the docs, and I can't ever find the one that I'm looking for anymore. So React Lifecycle functions. This is where it used to be. This is where it used to be. It is, okay. I just clicked on that and I shouldn't have. Okay. I just needed to scroll. Okay, it was not where I started. Here we go, the component lifecycle. Each component has several lifecycle methods that you can use, that you can override to run code at particular times in the process. So the way inheritance works, right? There are some functions that are defined on the superclass. If you write your own versions, then those will run in their place. So as long as you're inheriting from component, these functions will get called automatically at the right time. So the way these lifecycle things run, they either run right before or right after some important moment in that component's life. For example, immediately before or after it's rendered for the first time. And that's called mounting. So these methods are called in the following order when an instance of a component is being created and inserted into the DOM. So the constructor runs first. Then get derived state from props, then render, then component did mount. Okay, so component will mount is now great. So component will mount is deprecated. And that's the one we used in the morning. So component did mount will run as soon as render runs. So render will run, it'll draw the page, and then it'll immediately run component did mount. But it looks like get derived state from props runs right before render. So when should we load it from local storage? Right before it renders. We don't need anything in the DOM to already be there, so that seems fine. So get derived state from props. Invoked right before calling the render method, both on the initial mount and on subsequent updates. It should return an object to update the state, or null to update nothing. Okay, so that is different than the old way. So let's see about component did update. Let's see. I suppose we could use component did mount. I think this will be a little confusing. I like the other way better. Used to be you had component will mount that happens right before render, then component did mount right after. It's still in there, but now it's deprecated. I don't like to teach deprecated things. For the moment, let's see what happens if we do component did mount. So since this is already a class, I just add a new method called component did mount. I don't need to worry about arrow functions because this is being invoked automatically. And I just do what I want to do there. So I want to do local storage dot get item user, right? And that's going to get us that string. So we need to parse that to turn it back into an object. So json.parse. I'll save that to a variable. If that variable is there, then I'll update state. With the user that I got out of local storage. So as soon as the component renders the first time, get that user out of state. Get that user out of local storage and set state. So if we're going to do that, if when you sign in, we're going to save it in local storage, then when we sign out, we need to take it out of local storage, right? So local storage dot remove item user. So add it to local storage when we sign in, remove it from local storage when we sign out, in addition to updating state appropriately. Let's see. So let's sign out. Let's log in at a@q.org. Here we are. Let's refresh the page. There I am. Still there. Sign out, refresh. I'm still signed out. That's good. Sign in as someone else. and I'm signed in as that person, even if I refresh until I sign out. All right. So now you can actually stay signed in. Pretty nice, pretty nice. Still can't talk to each other because it still blows away the state of main every time. But the state of main? The main component's state every time. So persist user in local storage. Get it? Got it? Good.